M.10 Solve trigonometric equations, and on this we're going to figure out what angles it's going to take to be able to get -1 or anything else that's on there. We're solving it. We're finding theta. We're finding the angle. And if you look at your cheat sheet and you find sine of something to get -1, it's either going to be 3 pi over 2 or 270. But this is your domain. It has to be between negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. And what that is, that's your pi over 2. And that's your negative pi over 2. And negative pi over 2 is the same thing as the 3 pi over 2 or the 270. So negative pi over 2 is going to be your answer. Kind of the same thing with this one. We are only going to be looking at the positives and the negatives. And since this is a -1/2, well, let me just say sine 30 is 1/2, right? That would be up here. But since to get a -1/2, we're going to have to go this way. And so it would be -30. And -30 is the same thing as negative pi over 6 because we have to be in radians, because that's what our domain is in. And on this, just pretend or think of it as getting theta by itself. It actually is getting theta by itself. And so the first thing we're going to do is subtract the 15 over 2 and get -15 over 2. Then we're going to divide by 15, and dividing by 15 is putting, or dividing by -15 is putting -15 on bottom. So I'm going to put, since I already have a fraction over here on this side, I'm going to put -15 on bottom also. And those are going to cancel out, which leaves me with a 1 on top. And so we have sine theta equals a +1/2. And that's going to be in the first quadrant, and that's going to be 30 degrees. If we divide by -18 and divide by -18, we get cosine theta equals 0. And when is cosine 0? At 90 degrees. Add 2, add 2, divide by 4. So cosine theta equals a -1/2. Cosine, cosine what is 1/2? Cosine 60 is 1/2. So since we're a -1/2, remember all students take classes, and cosine is positive in the first and the fourth. That's why they give us this domain for cosine, because cosine is negative in the second quadrant. So since it's -1/2, that's going to be 60 right there, which makes this angle, to get the reference angle of 60, as 120. Okay. What we're going to do here, since both of these are cosine thetas, and both of these are constants, we're going to flip and flop. We're going to add the 11 cosine theta to the left side, and we're going to subtract 7 over 2 to the right side. Negative 3 plus 11 is 8 cosine theta. 15 over 2 minus 7 over 2 is 8 over 2, and 8 over 2 is 4. Then we divide, and cosine theta equals 1/2, which is what we already did, which is 60, and we are in degrees, and it is positive, so I don't have to worry about any quadrants. So the answer is going to be 60. Secant to get 2 is 60, and this is negative 60. Secant is with cosine, so we have to be over here, which is 60 again. But since we are in radians, 60 pi over 180 to, actually, no. 60, so this is 120. So 120 is the answer, but 120 is not in radians, so we're going to convert it to radians by multiplying by pi and dividing by 180. Those zeros will cancel out, and 12 over 18 will reduce to 2 over 3, so this is 2 pi over 3. That's a pi. Ooh, I did not give myself enough room on this one. Add 9 secant theta, add 2. There's a 1 right here, so 1 plus 9 is 10. 18 plus 2 is 20. Divide by 10 to get 2. And just like we just got finished doing on the last one, but because the 2 is positive on the one we're working on now, it's just going to be 60, and 60 is pi over 3. Okay, does this equation have any solutions? And so it would take a long time to go through all of this, but let me just kind of get to the end of it. On these questions, if you were given the question, sine or cosine, remember it's going to have to be theta, not theta. Let's just say our answer has to be between -1 and 1. I could explain all this to you, but you're not going to remember it. So if our answer, and I know this isn't making much sense, but it will in just a minute. If our answer is between -1 and 1 or -1 and 1, then your answer is going to be yes. If you're talking about secant or cosecant, then it's going to be anything smaller than -1 or anything bigger than +1. Okay, so let's just go through this and see what's happening. If we subtract 3 and we subtract 18 sine theta, we get 19 minus 18, which would be 1. So 1 sine theta, and 6 over 3 is 2. Remember, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. And if this is the hypotenuse, and remember hypotenuse is always the longest side of a triangle, well, this couldn't be opposite because 1 is smaller than 2. So anytime the top is bigger than the bottom, we're not going to be able to do sine or cosine because the hypotenuse is smaller than the top. So your answer to this is no. the equation doesn't have any solutions because you can't take a sine of a positive 2. Basically just the opposite with this. So 10 secant theta equals 15 minus 5 is 10. 10 over 2 is 5. We divide by 10 to get 1/2. Remember, cosecant is the reciprocal, secant is the reciprocal of cosine, and so this would be hypotenuse over adjacent. So again, the hypotenuse, or the supposed hypotenuse, 1, is smaller than the adjacent 2. That doesn't work because the hypotenuse always has to be the bigger number. So again, no. This does not have an answer because 1/2 is not bigger than 1 or smaller than -1. And sine, even though, and this would be a plus plus, so you can go ahead and simplify this, but the square root of 3 is obviously smaller than a 6, and if you're doing sine or cosine, the top number always needs to be smaller than the bottom number, or it's not impossible to do. So this does not have any solutions either.